Hello everyone. I've been looking forward to this video for quite some time. This is going to be ranking every single episode of The Boys TV show. All 40 episodes. Now they're going to be scored, 1 through 10. 1 is awful, 2 is bad, 3 is weak, 4 is lacking, 5 is mediocre. It's okay. It's watchable, but it's not good. 6 is it's kind of good, but not really. 7 is it's somewhat good. It's got a couple problems, but overall it's fine. 8 is an actual good episode of The Boys. 9 is a great episode, just one that you're gonna remember. And then 10 is just like a masterpiece. One of the best pieces or one of the best episodes that the entire run of the show has to offer. So again, I'm going to be ranking all 40 of them. Briefly, right before I start, I do want to mention I do have a Kickstarter running. It's got 9 days to go. I am making a game, and a copy only cost $1. So if you're so inclined, I appreciate just every single dollar of support. And so, shameless plug aside, I'm going to get right into the video. And we're going to be doing them in chronological order. So I'm going to be starting with episode 1 from season 1, name of the game. And this is actually going to go in 8 out of 10. This is, the show, it's a good first episode, and the series is off to a pretty good start. This episode spends time just, showing us as the viewer the world of the boys and the image that the Avant and the superheroes kind of put out as opposed to how it actually is behind the scenes. We learn about our main character. Obviously, what happens to his girlfriend and how that affects him. Him being butcher and whatnot. And so, again, for a first episode, it's definitely good. It's solid. Considering it has to spend all this time building the world, it's still a pretty good episode. So, I saw 8 out of 10. Alright, next up is episode 2, Cherry. And this one is actually going to go right here. I think that Cherry is a great episode. So in this episode, obviously, Translucent has been captured. They're trying to figure out how to off him. And eventually they do figure out a way. Huey is the one who actually would be the one to kill Translucent. And that actually creates a really strong amount of tension within the episode because we're thinking there's no way Huey's going to do it. Even Translucent's like, you're not going to do it. You're not a killer. And then he does it, which is fake. Again, the tension and the drama is just really strong in this episode. Homelander actually flies around looking for Translucent, and so the boys have to handle that situation. So, again, just even better than the first episode. This is a great episode filled with tension, world building, all the good stuff. So, definitely a great episode. All right, next up is episode 3, Get Some. I'm going to put this right in 8 out of 10. Again, not quite as exciting as episode 2. Again, this episode is more so really focused on more world building. We are introduced to Popclaw, A-Train's girlfriend. Also, we're seeing the effect that learning about how the superheroes really are, along with, killing Translucent, we're able to see how that affects Huey. Him moving out and him telling his dad how he really feels. Compound V also, sort of makes its debut. We as the audience and the boys start to learn about Compound V and obviously the key role that it plays in the series, and they'll learn more about it as things progress. And so this is definitely a good solid episode. Again, not quite as good as Cherry in my opinion, but it's good and it's solid. All right, next up we have episode 4, The Female of the Species, and 9 out of 10. So in this episode, we actually meet Kimiko. And, she's just great. The unpredictable nature of Kimiko when the boys first meet her is just, it's captivating. And I just enjoy watching those scenes even over and over again. Also, there is a pivotal moment in the story of The Boys where it's the plane scene. If you've seen it, you know what I'm referring to. Where Homelander and Queen Maeve are unable to save the plane full of people, and somebody records it, and it's kind of a big deal, and it kind of reveals the true nature of Homelander. So, this is a great pivotal moment for the series. It's a great episode, and it will affect the series moving forward. So, again, great episode. Next up is Good for the Soul, and I'm going to put this right here in good. If you're noticing a trend, season 1 is doing pretty well. It's pretty strong. But this episode they learned that Compound V is actually injected into babies, which was a pretty interesting reveal and kind of just shows how far Vought is willing to go to achieve their goals, along with some other reveals that are going on. Annie also sort of breaks Vought's script, which is just very enjoyable to watch. It's nice to see Annie kind of stand up for what she believes in, and obviously Vought's not exactly happy about it, but at the same time, if the public likes it, the public likes it. So, again, this is another good episode, and obviously, season 1, it's doing well, in my opinion at least, very well for itself. So next up is The Innocents, and this is actually also going to go an 8 out of 10. Again, this is another solid episode. It's kind of action light. Again, we're just more so, setting up the world of the boys. It is obviously season 1. The highlight of this episode, and I'll never find this not funny, is the Deep is banished to Sandusky, Ohio. Truly a horrible fate for a horrible superhero. But yeah, he's banished to Sandusky, Ohio, and I'll never not find that funny. Easily just the highlight of this episode. It makes it very memorable. Obviously, other things do happen, but that to me is just that's really what makes this episode stick out. So, solid 8 out of 10. Next up is the Self-Preservation Society, and this is going to be our first masterpiece. This is just a great episode. It's full of action. It's full of suspense. The next episode is the finale, and this episode does a fantastic job just kind of getting you craving that finale and getting you craving that closure. So, again, this is our first 10 out of 10. If you want to rewatch The Boys and see like highlight episodes, I definitely recommend this one. There are just certain scenes that are just, man, even on rewatch when you know what's going to happen, they're still just, they play out so well. Whew. Now, last, we're going to do the season finale of season 1, You Found Me. And this is going to go and grab it right down here. Right in here. So, again, it's not as good as the Self-Preservation, but it definitely is a good finale. The finale is more so focused on sort of wrapping up some of the loose ends of season 1 and also kind of setting up for season 2. Kind of just doing both of those while also having some action, obviously what happens to A-Train. So, it's a very ambitious finale. But I think for the most part it actually pulls it off. Just at the cost of, because it's trying to do so much, it ends up not being as exciting as the Self-Preservation Society. So, but again, it's a good episode. So this is all of season 1. As you can see, at least in my opinion, season 1 was great. It was a great season, and while it's true most of the episodes were just good, there were definitely a couple of standout episodes. So, now we move on to season 2, starting with The Big Ride. And The Big Ride is actually, it's going to go right up here. Actually, I'm going to put it, it's going to go right up here. The Big Ride is a fantastic first episode to season 2, a masterpiece. It's a wonderful start. So, one of the big things is there's this unknown assassin that kills someone during this episode, and that gives it a powerful tension. I mean, you just see the boys freaking out as as anybody would, understandably enough. They just saw someone's head get blown off, and they have no idea who did it, and they live in a world full of superheroes. So it has a wonderful start, full of tension, full of fear. Even you as the audience, I mean, the energy that the actors have on screen, their fear and their anxiety, it's kind of contagious in a way. You really find yourself invested in that. The boys are wanted fugitives, and I really like the way that plays out. I mean, life is much more difficult for them. There's a little bit of infighting going on. Also Butcher is missing, and they're wanting to find him, and Huey doesn't, and everybody else does, and there's that interesting dynamic going on. But the cherry on top of this episode is Stan Edgar's interactions with Homelander. They are just, oh man. People have made entire videos about their interactions in this episode. And they're just phenomenal. Both actors, the actor who plays Stan Edgar and the actor who plays Homelander, they do a phenomenal job in their scenes together. It is just great. So, The Big Ride is easily a masterpiece of an episode. Again, if you're going to rewatch an episode of The Boys, I definitely recommend this one. So, I mean, I can't sing this episode's praises enough, honestly. So next up is episode 2 of season 2, Proper Preparation and Planning. And that's actually going to be our first 7 out of 10. It's a somewhat good episode. This episode is really more so focused on just setting things up for the future of season 2. And so, it's good, somewhat good for a setup episode. It just lacks, again, the action, the tension of the debut episode of season 2. But if you ask me, that's pretty understandable, truth be told, because setup episodes, they are necessary. You do need to set plot points up so there's some sort of payoff later on. So in this episode, actually, Kimiko's brother, Kenji, actually debuts. So we learn about him, and again, not much happens, but again, it's more so setting up for future events, and they're going to pay off pretty fast. Because now we're going to go to episode 3, Over the Hill with the Swords of 1,000 Men. And this is actually going to go right on up here. Again, I think this is a phenomenal episode. I really like seeing the interactions that Homelander has with his son Ryan. Very interesting, seeing Homelander's weird, messed up way of trying to be a father, pushing Ryan and whatnot, and the effect it's having on him. Kenji is hunted down and he is killed, and we really get to see, a glimpse of how messed up the new character Stormfront is. You really see how messed up she is, but also how strong she is. And so you sort of realize that we may have a character who's worse than Homelander. If it's even possible. So again, this is a 10 out of 10 episode to me. Masterpiece, great. Definitely recommend checking this one out on the rewatch. And that being said, now I'm going to move on to season 2, episode 4. Nothing Like It in the World. And this one, I'm going to go ahead and give an 8 out of 10. This is definitely a good episode, at least in my opinion. So in this episode, the boys kind of learn more about Stormfront and just kind of how messed up her past is and her real identity. Butcher and Becca also have their first meaningful interactions with each other, which is honestly, to me, I'm not the biggest fan of romantic subplots, but it is pretty nice to see, especially given what they've both been through and just dealing with the nightmare that is Homelander, but also the nightmare that is Vought kind of covering up what Homelander did. So again, this is definitely a good episode. All right, next up, I'm going to review episode 5, We Gotta Go Now, and I'm going to give this episode 10 out of 10. If you're noticing a trend, there are a lot of really good episodes in season 2. So again, another phenomenal episode. It's season 2. Black Noir's presence during a certain scene is just incredible. It's great, even on the rewatch. The tension that builds up. I mean, up until this point, we haven't really fully seen what Black Noir can do. So we get to see it, in this, in a couple of scenes within this episode, and his on-screen presence is it's incredible. It's great. Um, Also, Homelander and Stormfront are kind of messing around with each other, you know, and we're seeing some of the twisted things that they, more so than Homelander does to Stormfront, and it's gross to watch, but it's gross in kind of a fascinating way. Like, you're kind of fascinated with how messed up those two are, and just seeing the the toxic relationship they have with each other. So yeah, this is again another phenomenal episode. And now I'm going to move on to episode 6, The Bloody Doors Off. And this is actually going to go, let me scroll on down over here. It's going to go in 8 out of 10. I definitely think this is a good episode. Scroll on up here. Stormfront and Homelander. The highlight to me of this episode is, just Stormfront in general, but the scene where Stormfront and Homelander just kind of gruesomely murder that criminal. Again, this episode, you get more of that. You get more of just seeing how messed up Stormfront and Homelander are. And that to me is kind of the highlight of this episode. But otherwise, it is a solid episode. Nothing phenomenal, nothing incredible, but it's definitely good. All right, next up is episode 7, Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker. This episode is actually going to go in Masterpiece. Again, this another 10 out of 10, another great episode. Seeing the assassination in court and how it affects everybody, everyone freaking out. This is a high action, high drama episode. A lot of interesting scenes kind of play out. We unfortunately get to see Ryan sort of manipulated by, Stormfront and Homelander. Which, again, it's messed up, but, from a story perspective, it is kind of interesting to see how they're trying to get him on their side and kind of isolate him from Becca. So, again, phenomenal episode. I definitely recommend rewatching this one. All right, and now we're going to the finale of Season 2, What I Know. And I'm going to be giving this episode an 8 out of 10. It's a good episode. Seeing Stormfront get her butt kicked is pretty entertaining. What happens to Becca is tragic, but it opens up some interesting story opportunities for later on. So again, sort of like the previous finale, Season 2's finale is setting up certain plot points for Season 3. It's still a solid finale, though. Again, although much like Season 1's finale, kind of, it's very ambitious and maybe bites off just a little bit more than it can chew, at least in my personal opinion. We actually learn the identity of the assassin, which is, to me, kind of really solidifies this as an 8 out of 10 episode. Just learning that reveal and going into Season 3 with that in mind. So, again, solid finale. I'd say about as good as Season 1's. So, now I've done Season 1 and I've done Season 2. And as you can see, as a series so far, it's off to a great start. The worst episode is a 7 out of 10. So, Season 1 and 2 are doing really good. Now we get into Season 3. We're going to be starting with Season 3, Episode 1, Payback. And I'm actually going to be giving this a 9 out of 10. Again, not as good of a start as Season 2, but still a great start to the season. We get to see how brutal Victoria Newman is. Just seeing what she ends up doing to her former friend who knows her past identity. We learn about Temp V in this episode. They kind of start setting that up. Also, this episode, despite it setting up a lot of things, does also have a good amount of action and definitely grabs your attention. We get to see a pretty interesting interaction between Butcher and Homelander, which again is another pivotal moment in the series that will kind of affect how the future moves forward. But also we learn that Maven and Butcher have been working together, and personally, I find Maeve and Butcher's interactions to be very interesting. They kind of contrast with, Butcher's interactions with Becca. She kind of brings out sort of the softer side of Butcher, but seeing how Maeve has a different effect on him, it is very interesting and compelling in a way. So, definitely give this episode a 9 out of 10. Again, it's a great episode. The next one is episode 2, The Only Man in the Sky. And I'm going to be giving this 8 out of 10. It's a good episode. Homelander's rant to me is the highlight. Just hearing him, go mask off to a certain extent. And kind of just show the general public how unhinged he really is. It's great to see. I mean, they in the previous seasons, they've been kind of setting up how Homelander's stability is decreasing, but it's really in full display in this episode. It's great. Butcher takes Temp V, and I find it really, really interesting how Butcher is struggling, to control, for example, his laser vision. A pretty interesting aspect I don't see people talking about is Butcher, and to a certain degree also another character later on. But Butcher really struggles to handle his superpowers, particularly his laser vision. And I really like that narratively. I like this idea that Temp V gives you this power, but along with some other side effects, you're struggling to control it. And even, it's supposed to wear off after, I think, 24 hours or something. But it's pretty heavily implied, especially in the episode, that's next, that Temp V sometimes lasts longer than it's intended. And so also there's sort of this, element where you can't fully control your powers. And so I find, Super Butcher to be interesting, but also the struggle's compelling. So again, this is a good episode, but now I'm going to go over to episode 3, Barbary Coast. And again, I kind of mentioned, the Butcher subplot a lot, but I'm going to go ahead and put this in, give it a 7 out of 10. Again, this is, another setup episode. We sort of get backstory on, like, Soldier Boy and some of the past events. Again, more of a setup episode. Butcher scares off Ryan and says some pretty not cool stuff, to put it mildly, to sort of scare Ryan off. But this is the episode that really displays the side effects of Temp V, which again I find to be the highlight of this episode. I wish we would have seen more of that, honestly. There's a scene where Butcher is he's in the bathroom, and he's just literally just like pounding his head against the wall because his laser vision is trying to come out and he's trying to control it. And he doesn't want to just laser everybody in the house, obviously. So he's struggling to control it. And it's just, again, it shows that with these newfound temporary abilities that Butcher has, there are some serious side effects. And Butcher's a pretty tough guy, but I'm pretty sure he either, was borderline, on verge of tears, or maybe literally shed a tear or two while trying to hold back the laser vision. I mean, for all I know, maybe he's burning his eyelids or something. But regardless, this exploration of the side effects of Temp V, I find it just pretty interesting and just pretty compelling, honestly. So, again, this is a solid setup episode. But again, it's mostly setting up so the future episodes can kind of do some interesting things, which they do, because the next episode, Season 3, Episode 4, Gloria's 5-Year Plan. This episode, oh man, is a masterpiece. Another phenomenal episode. So, in this episode, Stan Edgar and Homelander, again, have another fantastic moment together. Again, another moment that people have made entire videos on. From Homelander's perspective, he has ruined Edgar. He has everything. And Stan Edgar, he doesn't care. And it bothers Homelander. And just seeing their interactions, it is incredible. I could just watch those over and over again. That's a highlight. But there's more. So Huey actually takes some of the Temp V. And we get to kind of see how that plays out. He ends up, teleporting. But when he teleports, he loses his clothes. And it's pretty interesting seeing Huey finally have superpowers. We get the reveal that Soldier Boy lives, which is also profound, and obviously how that plays out. It's very interesting. And Kimiko actually loses her powers. It's another subplot. Really, this episode is full of these subplots that I personally, and subplots and moments I find to be very interesting. And it's just, even upon rewatch, very captivating. So this is, again, if you were to rewatch or you're looking for some of the better episodes to watch, I definitely recommend Gloria's 5-Year Plan. Masterpiece of an episode. All right, next up we have Season 3, Episode 5, The Last Time to Look on This World of Lies. And this is another masterpiece. Honestly, Season 3, Episode 3 walked, so 4 and 5 could run. And man, do they run. So in this episode, Queen Maeve is actually captured by a deranged Homelander who, again, we're seeing him spiral. Soldier Boy, we get to kind of spend more time with him, and we start to figure out that he's actually pretty unstable, which is, again, a pretty interesting plot point. And for me, in general, I find Soldier Boy very interesting. He's sort of a darker, more jaded take on Captain America. He's from a different time. And he's nowhere near as deranged as Homelander. Soldier Boy's actually a person. You can talk to him. You can reason with him. He's not just gonna... Again, there's not that uncomfortable tension in the room when Soldier Boy's there. So yeah, he confronts the Countess and obviously ends up killing her. I actually personally, your mileage may vary for this subplot. Personally, I really find the Blue Hawk subplot to be very interesting and very compelling. I also think it does a good job for the world building, seeing how, minorities are affected by Blue Hawk, the black community, for example. It's very compelling, honestly. So, to me, this is a masterpiece of an episode. This episode is a good example of the boys at their best. Definitely recommend, on the rewatch, checking this one out. So, with that being said, I'm going to be moving on to Season 3, Episode 6, Herogasm. And this episode is said to be, by some, the best episode. But for me, no, I'm joking. It's not. No, I don't have that hot of a take. So for me, let's see. I'm going to. It's definitely not. It's not a 6. For me, this is going in good. So I'll be honest. This episode could have been a masterpiece. But there's kind of two issues. The first issue is because this is the 3rd season of The Boys. There as you can see, there have been quite a few masterpiece level episodes. So the competition has grown stiffer. Maybe in season 1 this could have been a 10 out of 10. But, standards kind of rise as the season goes on, especially with how good season 2 was. But also, and this is the main thing for me, Herogasm, and your mileage may vary. People have different opinions. I really think this episode gets carried away with the fan service. And see, at first I kind of thought it was just me. But, speaking to other people and getting their opinions and realizing I'm not the only one who kind of thought that. What really stands out to me is the actor, I forget his name, but the actor who plays Soldier Boy, he's actually gone on a record, if I'm not mistaken, saying that, there are certain scenes involving Herogasm that he was actually uncomfortable with. Again, kind of showing me that I'm not the only one who thought that the fan service was maybe a little bit too generous, too gratuitous. Certain scenes kind of played for too long. It's like, we get the point. We get what's going on. But this is a superhero movie, or not movie, TV show. We're here for action, let's be honest. We're not here for that, There are different shows and various websites you can visit if you're looking for that kind of content. But, so to me, again, this would be a masterpiece, but just the fan service is just, too gratuitous, a little bit too excessive. And also, with how steep the competition is, that doesn't really reflect well in the episode. So, yep, this might be controversial. Some people say this is the best episode, but Yeah, I think I've made a decent case for why it's just a good episode instead of a masterpiece. All right, next up is season 3, episode 7. Here comes a candle to light you to bed. And so for this one, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think this is a great episode. I really enjoyed this one. I really like the fact that the writers give us backstory. And I love the way they did it. We get 2 backstories. We get Butcher's backstory. And the writers pretty cleverly, they use a soup who is able to kind of trap you in your mind. And they use that to show us Butcher's backstory with his brother Lenny. And I love it. I love all those scenes. They're great. Also, with Black Noir, we get more backstory. It's interesting because this is an episode, it sets up, it gives us backstory. This episode shouldn't be as good as it is, given all the backstory and all of the lore and whatnot it's giving us. But its method of delivery is so good. That's what ends up getting a 9 out of 10. Seeing Black Noir, remember his past, remember past events, through these like cartoony characters or whatever. Very entertaining. Also seeing Huey and Soldier Boy's interactions together. Very interesting. This is a 9 out of 10. Great episode. Borderline masterpiece. I just really enjoyed this episode. All right. And so now we get to one of the best, one of the most incredible episodes of TV ever to grace mankind. We're going to season 3, episode 8, The Instant White Hot. And man, this episode, it's so incredible. It cured my cancer. It's great. I mean, no, I'm joking. I'm exaggerating for comedic effect. It's somewhat good. It's honestly kind of carried by the action more than anything, to be honest. Along with, it really is carried more so by the action. So I have a lot to say about this episode. So the writing is really shaky for this episode. The writers kind of want things to happen, but they don't know how to make them happen. And again, shaky writing. Certain things happen involving Soldier Boy's powers, and they're never really explained. So I know at least one person who's seen The Boys, and his complaint with this episode is he doesn't think that Queen Maeve should have survived the fall. And so the discussion we kind of had was, well, how quickly does Soldier Boy's power drain the V within you? Because with Kimiko, it seemed pretty instant. But, maybe with Queen Maeve, it took longer. But that's kind of on the writers when you think about it. They should have explained, maybe, his blast, it drains the V, but how quickly it drains it varies. Or maybe the amount of V within your blood kind of varies. They could have explained it, but they don't. Key information that, seeing Queen Maeve survive, kind of, it may ruin the scene for you. It may ruin the entire episode for you. And because of the shaky writing, seeing Butcher turn on Homelander again, it may ruin this episode for you. And I think that's valid. I do. I don't like the way they handle Black Noir. I think his unceremonious demise was poorly written, in my opinion. It could have been done better. Especially given the things that the character has survived. A lot of people were thinking that they were going to, in future seasons, kind of do something with him. But I have to admit, this episode, there's no hints. I mean, it really is just an unceremonious demise. And personally, I'm not a fan of it. Although I will admit that's one of my weaker gripes with this episode. For some reason, this episode, they sort of at moments pretend like Soldier Boy is this bigger threat and is worse than Homelander. Which objectively isn't true. Homelander is much worse. He literally takes out Queen Maeve's eye. I mean, he's deranged. He's much worse than Soldier Boy. And it's like during that scene, instead of just removing Ryan from the room and continuing the fight, Butcher turns on Soldier Boy. It's not something Butcher would do, in my opinion, but the reason why he does is because the writers kind of need that moment to happen. So I give this episode A very, very generous 7 out of 10. I really should put it here, to be honest. But a very generous 7 out of 10. If I had to order these, this would be at the very bottom of 7 out of 10. It barely, barely makes into 7 out of 10. So, that's all I have to say about that disappointing finale. So now I'm going to move on to Season 4. I'm going to start with Episode 1, Department of Dirty Tricks. I'm going to give this 8 out of 10. I think it's actually a pretty solid first episode. So we're introduced to Sister Sage, and also the plot point of the Starlighters is kind of introduced. They also talk more about Butcher and his condition and sort of the effects of, the temp V on Butcher from Season 3. So, this is a good episode. I don't actually have too much to say on it. Seeing Homelander dress up like a normal dude is always great, though. I mean, you don't see much of that. So, next up is Season 4, Episode 2, Life Among Septics. And I'm going to give this episode, once again, 8 out of 10. As you can see, so far, most episodes in the series, they're good. A couple of somewhat low points. Looking at You, the instant white hot. But yeah, this is a solid episode. We are introduced to Firecracker. I really like the plot point with Ryan and his stuntman and what happened. We're also starting to see A-Train really turn on Homelander and kind of, really starting to see how messed up Vought really is. So yeah, a good episode. Next up is Season 4, Episode 3, We'll Keep the Red Flag Flying Here. And this one, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Definitely above the Instant White Hot, which I will never stop making fun of. Yeah, this episode, it's somewhat good. It's fine. The highlight to me is Huey almost getting caught by Homelander. That tension where you're like, oh man, Huey's dead. Man, that tension in that scene is just incredible. That scene alone elevates it to 7 out of 10. We do kind of learn more about Huey's mom and why she was in his life. And I do like that world building. And, it feels like we get to know Huey and his family and his circumstances more. Makes him a more compelling character, I'd say. But yeah, this episode is, somewhat good. Next up is Season 4, Episode 4, Wisdom of the Ages. And I am going to give this one a 9 out of 10. I actually really like this episode. There's the whole Firecracker drama going on. Frenchie finally confesses to Colin the messed up things that he did and rightfully, gets some payback for it. This is a great episode. And I would actually say, by far, this is the best episode of Season 4. So, yeah, this is a great episode. Not a masterpiece, but, for Season 4, this is, it's pretty impressive. So, now I'm going to move on to Season 4, Episode 5, Beware the Jabberwock, My Son. And this one is going in 7 out of 10. Not as good as the previous episode. But it's somewhat good. The soup virus is, a big plot point. The soup animals, they're interesting to watch in kind of a horrifying way. Stan Edgar is in the episode and great as always. And Frenchie turns himself in, which could be interesting if future episodes do something with it, but as you'll see, they won't. So it's 7 out of 10, somewhat good. Next up is Season 4, Episode 6, Dirty Business. And I'm going to give this episode, it's going to be our first 6 out of 10. This episode is, it's okay. It's alright. Kind of good. Definitely some tension there. You're wondering, just how violated Huey's going to get. Oh. But, just Tech Knight's weird party and whatnot, it's definitely a lackluster episode in the series. So yeah, 6 out of 10. This episode, I will quickly move on from it. The next one is Season 4, Episode 7, The Insider. And I'm going to give this episode 7 out of 10. Definitely better than the previous episode. Frenchie, if I'm not mistaken, is bailed out of jail unceremoniously. It's not made a big deal, which is very anticlimactic. I kind of wonder what was the point of the whole Colin arc, honestly. Sage, and when I say the point of the Colin arc, I don't mean that necessarily literally. I mean practically. Like, they could have done so much more with it, in my opinion. Sage is fired, which I think is a highlight. Annie is captured by a shapeshifter. I mean, there is definitely some interesting drama, and things do happen in this episode. So, 7 out of 10, it's somewhat good. But next is the highlight of the season. Season 4, Episode 8, the Season 4 finale. This exciting and satisfying conclusion. Oh, man, this is just some good television right here. I remember when this episode first came out, we were eating good. It was a good time. It was such a good time that I'm actually gonna put it right here in mediocre, because man, this finale was so mid. Jesus Christ. This is. So, I mean, a highlight for this episode, let me talk about the good, is, Mallory's interaction with Ryan, I mean, that's something. I would argue it's out of character. Especially, because remember, earlier in the season, Ryan killed the stuntman. So, controlling his strength would be on Ryan's mind. But instead, he just kind of unceremoniously kills Mallory, which I don't think he would. I think that's just bad writing, in my opinion. There's the Vought Purge, which, again, horrible writing. I don't buy Vought being able to kill off so many of their employees with nobody questioning it. Covering... Okay, so I'll put it this way. In the real world, a bunch of scientists have gone missing. Everyone's talking about it. It's a big deal. People don't just... Even within fiction... People don't just, large groups of people don't just go missing and nobody talks about it. That's not realistic writing. You have to have some sort of accounting for that. So the Vought Purge, where they're going around killing off the Vought employees, I find that, completely, immersion breaking, unbelievable. I mean, nah. Newman's exposed. The boys are captured, which, again, the writers need the boys to be captured. It's pretty iffy. Newman dies, which, again, I think her dying was... I don't mind it. It's just the way it played out. Again, the writing was just so bad. Honestly, you know what? I put this in mediocre, but I'm going to put this in weak. Now, the acting is really good, and there's some other things going for it. So I'm not going to put it in bad or awful. But it's a weak episode in a series that up until this point has been actually pretty strong for the most part. It's a glaringly bad episode. So I give it a 3 out of 10. It's not good. It has a couple highlights. It's not good though. But now we're going to get into season 5. We're going to start with episode 1, 15 Inches of Sheer Dynamite. And I'm going to give this episode 8 out of 10. This is a good start to season 5, especially compared to the nightmare vomit finale of season 4, which we shall not name ever again or speak of. So the boys are stuck in one of Homelander's, crappy concentration camps, basically. And, I find that pretty interesting. They, in order to draw out certain characters, the boys who've been captured are, sentenced to execution. There's the interesting kind of breakout scene, which I liked. There is the interesting interaction between Homelander and Huey, which to me is the highlight of this episode. But there's another highlight, which is A-Train. It's really cool seeing how his powers work. Now, I liked the scenes with A-Train. My one big issue is the writers wanted A-Train to die. But I have an issue with the way he died. So A-Train has, and this is shown, you can actually watch Season 1, Episode 8. And even in this episode to a certain extent. A-Train has super speed, but he also has super fast perception. So he ends up crashing because he doesn't want to hit this one lady, which is fine. But he should, he should have, again, he has super fast perception. So moving out of her way should have been seamless. Now, the writers could have been like, oh, hey, I don't know, maybe there was like an oil spill or something. And there's oil everywhere. And also there's the girl. So he's running and doesn't notice the oil, so it's slippery, but he's still running. Oh, and then there's the girl. So he moves out of the way, but it's oil, so he slips. With better writing, that could have worked out. But that being said, his last conversation with Homelander is just so entertaining. Oh man, it's so entertaining just seeing the effect he had on Homelander. Just no fear. So yeah, it's I give this episode a generous 8 out of 10. Maybe too generous, maybe. Next up is season 5, episode 2, Teenage Kicks. I give this episode I actually go over here. I give this episode a 9 out of 10. And this to me is the between this and another episode. No, I would say this is the highlight episode of season 5. I actually really enjoyed this episode. Seeing the soup virus being used, Soldier Boy coming back, Soldier Boy's hilarious conversation with Homelander when he's laying on the bed and he's first revived. Just the look of pure disgust and contempt that Soldier Boy has for Homelander while he's laying on the bed. The thing he accuses him of, he just has no respect for him. And it's just a very entertaining interaction. It's nice seeing that, Mother's Milk still has a heart and he saves the one crow lady. I don't know why I said that's so funny. But yeah, he saves the crow lady. He spares her from the suit virus. So, and that surprise ending where we all think that Soldier Boy died, but he lived. This is a great episode. Next up is season 5, episode 3. Every one of you sons of bees. I'm not gonna say it, just not because I can't. I just don't really care to. I'm gonna give this episode 7 out of 10. It's a somewhat good episode. So there's the Huey death fake out, where we think Huey has been blown up, but actually, I have mixed feelings on it, but I lean more towards I like it because, man, my heart was just racing when I thought Huey, died. I was like, oh my God, they killed Huey in season 3. That scene with him in the invisible, and also, the plot point about him, killing Translucent, the one, I forget his name, but, Translucent was his father. I actually kind of do like the way that played out. Huey's guilty, and Huey didn't really handle it well, but it's understandable why Huey handled it the way he did. I actually kind of like that. The virus is destroyed. There's that. Homelander just, basically tries to kill his own son, which again is another highlight of this episode. So I give it a 7 out of 10, somewhat good. So yeah. Next up, I'm going to move on to King of Hell. That's right, I won't say the B word, but I'll say hell because I'm weird. Alright, I'm going to give this episode a 9 out of 10. Again, I don't quite enjoy this one as much as Teenage Kicks, but I really enjoyed this episode. I really like the concept of a soup who makes people hate, like just imbues hatred and malice. I really like that, and I find that idea very captivating. Not just the idea, though. I like the way the writers execute this idea of, apparently based off of Soldier Boy's comments, when he was human, and regular, he was a hateful person, and the V1 in his system just, it gave him the ability to spread hate. I guess not just in the building, but we see dead bodies outside, even outside into the forest. So, it's kind of implied that his hatred it takes people over and brings out the worst in them. But it's also spreading. And so that's interesting, not just from a superhero threat level perspective, but there's also the sort of metaphorical, and symbolic meaning of how hate can kind of spread from person to person and grow, and get out of control. So I actually really like this episode. If you ask me, this is the last good episode of The Boys, to be honest. I actually really liked it. I also really liked the reveal that Homelander is weak to enriched uranium. I really liked that. I liked the interaction between Homelander and Butcher, as Homelander's in the enriched uranium. So I really enjoyed this episode. Personally, I know some people say that nothing really happened, but I disagree. I think a lot happened. I just that again, nobody really died all like that, but. Just because nobody dies, that doesn't mean it's a bad episode. And just because multiple people died doesn't make it a great episode. I mean, Newman died in the awful, disgusting, horrific season 4 finale, which I said I wouldn't mention, but I did, and I have a gross taste in my mouth. I have to drink some water just to get that gross taste out. Whew, man, that's a bad finale. But someone dying doesn't necessarily make it good if it's not written well. And someone not dying isn't necessarily bad if the writing can explain it. So, yeah, last good episode of The Boys in my opinion. Next up is Season 5, Episode 5, One Shots. And I am going to give this a 6 out of 10. I like the concept of this episode kind of bouncing around the world of The Boys. But it's a little bit too slow. It's more of a slow-paced episode, just a little bit too slow for me. I can see somebody rating this episode higher, and it's fine. This is 6 out of 10. It's kind of good. Definitely not a bad episode. Again, a little bit more slower paced. Then there's the whole, I do find that, it's interesting that, actually, no, every plot point I think of, they're not really that interesting. Like, a lot of things happen in this one. Butcher's conversation with Huey, the death of Black Noir's director, the firecracker drama, Soldier Boy protecting Homelander. I'll say that. That's definitely the highlight, Soldier Boy, sort of actually trying to be somewhat of a father figure to Homelander. I'll say that much. Although, again, a big writing problem, though, is you don't have to kill Homelander. You can just take away his powers. A lot of their weird comments on Homelander being a weirdo and this, that, and the other, they are kind of true. Bro's kind of a freak, like, low-key. Like, he's pretty weird, just sitting in the corner, just mean-mugging people. I mean, bro's pretty weird. So, the writing isn't so tight, so... But I do like the concept of this episode. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. And again, I could see somebody putting it higher, but just for me personally, 6 out of 10. Alright, next up is episode 6 of season 5, Though the Heavens Fall. This is going in... Let's see right here. It's really, really good episode, right? Nope. Another 6 out of 10. You're going to see a trend. So, the Deep kills Black Noir. Black Noir forgets that he can fly because the writers told him to forget because it's convenient for them to write him out of the story because they don't know what to do with him. Sage defects. This... It's not awful, but this episode's not. It has some highlights. There's the comment on like immortality, and how that it kind of affects people and affects relationships. But this is not good, Chief. I'm sorry. It's lacking. Next up is season 5, episode 7, The Frenchman, the Female, and the Man Called Mother's Milk. And surprise, surprise, this is also going in 6. Again, it's kind of good, but not really. I mean, the highlight is Frenchie's death, which I'll say this: it's nice to see that Frenchie died for something. That is nice. Although sort of the writing around it's kind of iffy. I mean, yeah, it's not a good episode. Not a good episode. And I'm gonna move on. I'm done talking about season 5. Just one more to go. Last is gonna be season 5, episode 8, the series finale, Blood and Bone. And well, we finally wait, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. We finally have our diamond in the rough. Look at this. Hey, look, it fits perfectly. Man, I'd love to put it up here. Unfortunately, it's not that good. So yeah, for a series finale, disappointing. Kimiko now has the power to remove V, but she doesn't practice. So when when Kimiko and Butcher go to confront Homelander, and Butcher's yelling to Kimiko to blast Homelander, she has performance issues because she didn't practice. So she has to call on the ghost of Frenchie to help her with her performance issues. So she can finally blast Homelander because I guess she just didn't want to practice, which oh, the writing. Oh. I think the way Father died was wacky. I mean, it was nice to see Ashley kind of become a good guy in the end, but Father's death to me was wacky. I don't know if that actually would have been the way, scientifically how it would have played out. Kind of a little bit immersion breaking, but whatever, minor gripe. Hated Butcher's final arc in this. The writers needed Butcher to become a villain, and so the writers were like, all right, well, we're going to make sure that Ryan hates him and Ryan doesn't want him in his life and isn't even open to it, which kind of understandable, fine, whatever. I think it's a little bit hard to buy. Butcher is obviously fond of Ryan. Ryan knows it. He literally invites Ryan into his life. Ryan only has really let Butcher come in and out of his life because deep down he wants that relationship with Butcher. They both do. But whatever, fine, I can let that go. The writers kill this man's dog to prove a point. I swear to God, one of the writers literally, he manifested in the story, got a gun, shot the dog, just to prove a point and make Butcher start his villain arc. Which is, even if you like the idea, it was rushed. It could have been extended to like 2 or 3 episodes. I really did not like Butcher's final arc. I don't like how they had Huey shoot him. I just don't like the way that played out. It felt like it was fanficky and not really how the character interactions would have actually gone. I did not like that. So, and you know what? It was mid. It had a couple little minor moments, but it was mid. It was mid. I do like how the final battle between like the Deep and Starlight, I did like that. Although the writers make her magically know to take him to the beach because all the sea creatures are mad at him. But also all the sea creatures, they happen to be waiting for him out there because they just conveniently know that he's fighting Starlight at that particular time. It's mid, which it's mid. It's watchable, but again, if look at all these masterpieces. Look at all these great episodes. Look at all these good episodes. And as you can see, once we delve into like season 5 and season 4, I mean, look, it's just, the show definitely fell off. I mean, there's no denying that. What a shame. But all right, all right. That's enough. I am done talking about season 5. So that's that. This is pretty much the video. I've gone over all 40 episodes. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear them in the comment section. Any critiques of my opinions or any critiques of the show, or maybe you can even give me, your own sort of, order of how you put the episodes. But yeah, this is the video, right before it ends. Another, shameless plug. I do have this Kickstarter. I am making a one-page tabletop role-playing game. A copy only cost $1, and so only 9 days to go, and I've got $69 out of my goal of just $100. So I'd appreciate if you could back the project. Every single dollar helps, and also I will very briefly mention that the goal is $100, but there are actually quite a few stretch goals, including like new items, more classes, more fancy races, a new tower, etc., etc. So if you're into fantasy, I mean, or even if you just want to support a small YouTuber with only 100-something subscribers, again, I'd appreciate the support. So, also if you could like the video and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. I'd appreciate all the support. It kind of motivates me to keep going. But that being said, I hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good life. Stay safe, and stay away from the season 4 finale. Man, that thing is dangerous. Ugh. Man, I need to get a Pepsi and drink it just to cleanse my palate of that disgusting episode. Yeesh. All right, bye-bye.